Hello, neighbor. Welcome to the Dynasty Happy Hour Contractor. It is your contractor. It is Memphis. You can find me on Twitter at DWZ Memphis. And as the song goes, it has been a while. Was planning on having some of the previous guests back on the show. A little bit harder than I think to wrangle up active Dynasty owners in the middle of the season. But you know what? I've got some new contractor guests who are in the middle of their season, and my guest tonight is no exception. His name is Patrick, and I am very, very excited to talk to him about this roster. Man, it feels good to be back in the saddle. So you may ask yourself, hey, where's Memphis been? Where's the contractor been? Been very busy with the Dynasty Warzone feed and very busy with what's going on over there. So I'm just going to get this real quick, and we're going to get Patrick and get this thing moving. So over at the Dynasty Warzone, we have been really working and focusing on our YouTube channel. Very simply, the Dynasty Warzone. And we, starting week 9, so this is going into week 7 of the 2020 regular season, going into week 9, that Monday after week 9 Sunday, we are going to have 5 shows a week on the Dynasty Warzone feed. We're going to have all kinds of different stuff. We're going to have the Dynasty Warzone. We're going to have the gambling show entitled The Fabulous Big Bet. Been very well received over there. We are going to have 2 injury updates a week. We are going to have a Dynasty buys and sells show. But the cool thing is I've learned through listening to people like you guys, our consumer, that not everybody absorbs Dynasty and fantasy content via YouTube. And not everybody absorbs and enjoys their Dynasty and fantasy content via podcast. Some people enjoy both. So going forward, starting the Monday after week 9, you're going to get every show on the podcast feed and every show on the YouTube feed. I am going to record the contractor. Now, if you want the podcast version, you have to go to the Dynasty Happy Hour. I'm going to try to figure out a way to get access to the Happy Hour's YouTube feed so that you'll be able to see my not so handsome mug live and in person. But if you're listening to this in podcast, I'd be most grateful if you would hit pause, as long as you're not driving, operating farm equipment or what have you, and go into this podcast player and go subscribe to the Dynasty Warzone. It's my baby. But this right here is a passion project as well. And while you're there, leave the Warzone and the Happy Hour. Leave both Dynasty podcasts a 5-star review. Nothing makes me prouder or happier than to see my name in the Dynasty Happy Hours reviews on iTunes and Stitcher and what have you. So that's what's going on. That's where I've been. Again, as always, you can find me on Twitter at DWZ Memphis. But it's been brought to my attention that not everyone is on Twitter, that I actually heard a study that only 20% of adults are on Twitter, which means that 1 out of 5 of you are actively using Twitter as your social media platform. Hey, you know what? If I can help you in any way, you can simply find me by sending me an email dynastywarzone@gmail.com, and I'll get back to you as best I can. But if you are on Instagram, Twitter, what have you, you can find the show on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, all your social media platforms at Dynasty Warzone. So give us a follow, and we'll see how we can continue to entertain you. But speaking of entertaining, my guest tonight, I am looking forward to spending some time with my guest. His name is Patrick, and I am going to welcome him to the show. Patrick, how are you? And welcome to the Dynasty Happy Hour Contractor.
Hey, Memphis. Thanks for having me. I've been a longtime fan, first-time caller, and happy to be on the show.
Happy to have you. So they know enough about me. Let's know a little bit more about you. So how long have you owned this particular roster? When did you take this thing over? Was it a startup? Was it an orphan? Give me some information.
So this was I'd been playing redraft for a few years, and I wanted to get into Dynasty and wasn't really hooked up into any Dynasty, so I started my own. And that's what actually brought me to the Warzone in the first place, was trying to get a feel for how Dynasty works compared to a redraft and all that. So I'm the commissioner of this league, and I started it up. It started as an 8-team league in let's see, we did 2018 was our first year, and then we expanded to 10 teams and did an expansion draft with protected rosters and pulling off benches for the new teams, and new expansion teams ended up with Julio and Kelsey and some solid pieces on their team. So it's actually ended up pretty competitive, and it's a lot of fun.
Okay, and what do you like most about this particular league? Is it a bunch of good guys, a bunch of good ladies? What's the mix of the league like, and how's the overall activity of the league been?
We've got 2 ladies and 8 guys at this point. One of the ladies is a wife, so anytime that weekly matchup comes around, that's fun to watch the trash talk there. I like the format because it was the first Superflex league that I joined. It's a half-point PPR, half-point first down, and then turnovers are pretty heavily weighed. So I thought that was part of the balance that I liked with the Superflex. Was you had weeks last year where Jameis scored you -3 because he had 2 pick sixes that cost -4 each, and a touchdown's 4. So in my eyes, a pick six was just a touchdown the other way. So I kind of like the somewhat unique scoring, and it's a group of friends that talk trash in real life to each other too.
I absolutely love playing fantasy sports with female GMs. They are, for the most part, very calculating, very smart, and very good players. And I think it brings a dynamic to the league that is great. My oldest league still running is my 17-year-old redraft league. And this league has transitioned. The husband, the dad of the group, Aaron, initially about 4 or 5 years in, we brought in his wife. And she was the most vicious, cutthroat competitor. I know. She was great. And now she has slowly started to transition back, and their 11-year-old son, Brady, has started to man the ship. And let's just say he has his mom's competitiveness. So I love a good fantasy team. So why did you want to chat about this roster with me on the Contractor?
Well, I was the champion last year, and as commissioner and league startup and all that, I got my belt from. Am I allowed to say where I got it?
Yeah, absolutely. Give him some love.
I got it from Trophy Smack, and I got the ring with the promo code DWZ ring. You get a free ring if you buy a trophy.
You are a sweet man.
Yeah, so I did that whole thing and talked a lot of smack and posted some pictures and all that. So I pretty much rode Lamar and Josh Allen through most of last year. And I had skill position players that played well too. Mike Gesicki helped me out in the championship weeks when he was going off in week 15 and 16. But then since then I've made a few moves and gotten Pat Mahomes on my team. Added a pick, got rid of that pick, all kinds of moves. And at this point, I am now sub 500. The other thing that I should say about the scoring format is we do have an additional matchup against the league median. So if you're one of those that's the second highest points in the league and you lose to number 1, you get a 1-1 record for that week. If you just poop the bed, you're 0-2. So right now, as of this recording, I'm 5-7 and feel like I have one of those kind of underperforming rosters. I don't have as much depth as it felt like at the beginning of the year all of a sudden, and kind of looking to see where to go.
Okay. Well, I definitely like this team, and I can see how you won the championship. Now, I will give you kudos. You wrote one of the most comprehensive write-ups of anyone that I've had as a guest on the Contractor. So tip of the cap to you. I certainly appreciate that. Just some notes for the listening audience that can't read what I'm reading. You wound up making some moves. You moved Lamar. You flipped Joe Burrow. You moved to Kamara. That one, obviously, if any of us could see the future, we would play the lottery or the Millie Maker in DFS every week and wouldn't need to do our day jobs. But I can see some of the moves that you made. So I just want to jump into your lineup because we can't undo some of the stuff that has been done. But one thing I want to stress is that this is a 1 QB league. If this was a QB league, Mister, you would have the best of both worlds with this lineup. So let's just talk about QBs for a minute. It is a 1 QB.
No, this is super flex. Sorry.
Oh, you know what? I see. My apologies. I was looking, man, I don't know where my head was. So you have Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. And man, what is that? 2 top 5 QBs right now?
Yeah.
And I know Josh Allen's not had the best games the last 2 weeks as we record this going into week 7, but I am not concerned. I'm fired up. He gets the Jets this weekend. And we knew Josh Allen was going to have some moments. But then what about Patrick Mahomes? Like he has not been Patrick Mahomes, I guess. But you also got Sam Darnold and Baker. So your QB3 business is not as great as it could be. So how are you feeling about your quarterback room? I just now saw the super flex. I feel like such a dum-dum.
That's all right. I traded Lamar and ended up with Burrow from that trade because I didn't, we talk about the rushing upside versus the longevity of a quarterback, right? And I was thinking having Josh Allen as a rushing guy, having 2 rushing quarterbacks is great when they both have great weeks. But 3 years from now, is one of them going to have a bum knee and not be playing the same way? So I transitioned to Burrow initially, and then I kind of overpaid for Mahomes, I think, because I liked the idea of Mahomes and Josh Allen, because Mahomes was kind of hedging my bets against Josh Allen not lasting, is how I looked at it. In retrospect, Burrow was probably the same thing, and I would have had Kamara on my team still. So that, like you said, one of those things you can't undo. As far as Baker and Darnold, Baker, I believe in less and less every week that he plays, it seems like. I guess I believe in him less and less from a fantasy standpoint. He seems like he's a real competitive guy and he's leading the team well. But yeah, he's just not scoring me points. And Sam Darnold, until Adam Gase is out of there, I don't see him being in my lineup anytime soon, but he seems too young to give up on. But I'm pretty much young across the board. I didn't draft many people above 30 because I wanted to stay young but still be competitive from the beginning.
Well, I love this quarterback room, and having 4 starters is a gift. You know that someone lost Dak in this league. You mentioned the running quarterback. Now, I've even been as bold in some Superflex leagues to only carry 2 quarterbacks. But if one of my quarterbacks, my main 2, like I'll give an example, I'm in a league with Tyler of the Dynasty Happy Hour, where one of my 2 quarterbacks is Deshaun Watson and the other one's Jared Goff. So I have to carry a 3rd quarterback because, Watson's been hurt before. I think he had to travel by bus instead of plane because he had a lung issue one year. So I've got to carry a good 3rd quarterback. I carry Derek Carr. I don't start him very often, but it's good to have him. And I think that's what you want to do here because I think Mahomes runs more than he ever has. I think going back to like week 10 or 11 through the Super Bowl, he was averaging 35 or 37 yards a game, if I remember correctly, during that run. And we saw it the other night against the Bills. And because of that, I don't mind it. I would actually want to keep Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold is probably going to lose his job to Trevor Lawrence. And to be honest with you, that's the best thing that could ever happen to him. He's going to wind up on a team. I've heard rumors of the Colts. That's my favorite team. The Colts being potentially interested in him. I think that would be great. I'm a big Carson Wentz guy, but he's never looked the same since he was taken away from Frank Reich. So I think Reich would be a great mentor for him. Obviously, Indy has good weapons with an aged veteran in T.Y. Hilton. You got Paris Campbell, Michael Pittman Jr. They've got the offensive line. They just drafted Jonathan Taylor. Sam Darnold would be the chef's kiss to go right in there because the Colts are not going to be afraid to move a first. They moved their first last year for DeForest Buckner. And I would love, as a Colts fan, to see Sam Darnold here. So he's my ultimate hold or buy low in a 2 QB or super flex right now, because people are giving him away.
Right.
If you didn't have him and Baker, let's say you just had Baker, he would be the one that I would be looking to move. But like right now, someone in your league probably was hoping that Andy Dalton was going to be the answer to the test when Dak went down. And you know, there's some other underperforming quarterbacks. You got guys on bye. But so in your quarterbacks, I would be looking to move Baker. I very much think that if we look forward and then look back a year from now, the situation that Mitch Trubisky has found himself in, I would not be surprised. I'm not predicting it, but I'm also going to say I wouldn't be surprised if Baker was in the exact same position. A head coach who had a relationship with the quarterback they brought in, just like the Bears brought in Foles. The Cleveland Browns, Stefanski has a relationship with Case Keenum, and I wouldn't be surprised if at some point. So if you get the opportunity to get a conversation going around Baker, maybe he has a good game against the Bengals. I think he's got a game against the Raiders. He's got a very good upcoming schedule. You're looking for your cash out window. So that's what I would do. But also, you still have your own first-round pick this coming season, and I don't think you're going to get Lawrence or Fields, but there's the Trey Lance guy coming out. There's a guy out of BYU I've heard good things, Zach Wilson, Kyle Trask out of Florida, and the kid, I think it's Mac Jones out of Alabama. There's going to be quarterbacks in this class, and with your first-round pick, you could always add another one. So your quarterback room is locked. The only thing I would recommend, if possible, is trying to get a cash out on Baker. Any issue with that, or would you prefer to move Darnold?
Now this may seem crazy before we get to the rest of the team. I do have an offer on the table right now to send out Josh Allen and Juju and get back DK Metcalf and Drew Lock.
Man, I could see it. You would be putting a lot of eggs in the Drew Lock basket. Now, the one thing that Drew Lock has, he has weapons. He's got an offensive coordinator that I think is so undervalued as a coordinator, and that's Pat Shurmur. I don't think Case Keenum, I brought him up. He had his best career year with Shurmur. Daniel Jones has not looked the same in New York without Pat Shurmur. He's a great OC, but that's big-time gambling. I like Josh Allen. I like his rushing upside. I don't think that's something that Locke will bring to the table. That is definitely gambling. But, man, it's hard. I hear a lot of people right now calling DK Metcalf the wide receiver one. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and say I don't mind that trade at all. I think the shine's off Juju. And
the trade calculator said it was close. And it's, I guess part of my other side of it is Josh Allen is kind of my guy. I've got him in 3 out of 4 dynasty leagues that I'm in. So I've always thought of him as kind of a cornerstone of how I've built my dynasty teams, I guess. So giving him up is extra hard, even if I am getting Metcalf back and making the wide receiver room better. But he's going to be hard to move.
I'm going to give you another trade to propose to this owner back. Okay. Once we get to your wide receivers, because I'm assuming this owner needs a quarterback.
He does. He's got a decent number of young ones, but he's got Drew Lock, Daniel Jones, just some guys that are underperforming right now. And then he's got Drew Brees, who's, how much longer is he going to be around? So I think he's thinking for the future.
Drew Brees, I can tell you, I this one I can see into the future. He's got approximately 10 regular season games left, but maybe 11. I don't remember. I think he's played 5. So yeah, 11 games. I mean, his seat is already warm and waiting for him in the broadcast booth at NBC. And I think that's how you approach it. So let's just go to your wide receiver room. You were talking about adding DK Metcalf. You currently have Tyreek Hill, a personal favorite, big fan. Juju Smith-Schuster. I've never been a big fan. I get why people were. Good offense, Big Ben, good quarterback. But that has changed. Cortland Sutton, man, too bad. We see Tim Patrick having some good moments with Drew Lock. Speaking of Drew Lock, and that would have been Cortland Sutton. So what could have been, but we'll see him next year. The resurgent Brandon Cooks, Mike Williams, who he is someone for all listeners. If you don't have Mike Williams, he's someone I'm looking to acquire as the chemistry between Mike Williams and Justin Herbert continues to grow. The price is only going to go up. Preston Williams, he's hit or miss. And then some guys. You got Anthony Miller, Keelan Cole can help you out in a spot, Cordarrelle Patterson. Van Jefferson I was high on until both Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp re-signed. He feels like he's desperate for wide receiver 3 in Rams country for the foreseeable future. Then we've got Paris Campbell, who I like but can't seem to stay healthy, unfortunately, and Lynn Bowden Jr. So how can we get DK Metcalf on this roster without giving up Josh Allen? Do you think Josh Allen is going to be the deal breaker with this owner?
I've tried shopping Baker and Darnold to him, and he seems to think that they're not a tier above what he has and not worth the move in his case. And it's the way they're playing right now. It's hard to disagree with him.
That is completely fair. What you may do, to use a poker reference, is you may sweeten the pot a little bit. I would come back with, and maybe it's not something that you do this week. That's why they call it gambling, but I've got a little bit of gamble in me. I mean, I host a podcast about gambling. So I would gamble a little bit that Baker has a bit of a bounce back against a very suspect Browns defense. And I think Brandon Cooks is going to be in a shootout at home against the Packers. And I would bounce back a little bit, and I would even offer Juju and Cortland Sutton and Baker for DK and maybe even Daniel Jones. Now, as we record this, Daniel Jones is having a pretty good game. So I don't know, but maybe you can add an injured Cortland Sutton. Say, hey, Cortland Sutton may be just as good as DK next year with Drew Lock, and you would have that stack. Maybe you can work something out to where you don't have to give up Josh Allen. I would come at it from that perspective, because everything in Dynasty is how you sell your players, how you feign, maybe not lack of interest, but concern. Where's Lockett going? There's another huge wide receiver class coming up this year. So I think maybe you can add your first. I don't love giving away first round picks, but maybe we go Baker, Juju, and a first for DK and Daniel Jones. Those are some things that I would do. But if there's a way to land DK without giving up Allen, man, that's perfect. The 1-2 punch of Tyreek Hill and DK Metcalf would be special. And then you would still have Brandon Cooks. You could work in some Mike Williams. You would have some work to do in the draft down the road. But, man, that could be big time for you.
Yeah, and that was part of my reasoning behind going after a wide receiver of that caliber. And as I was looking at my roster, it just seemed like, well, there's only so much that I have that has value. Like DK value, current DK value, I guess. But the way that I see a lot of these guys, like I've believed in Mike Williams for a long time, even when he's having bad weeks, and I've held on to him through all the crap he's been through and such. And kind of the same deal with Curtis Samuel, that maybe misplaced in that case, but just holding on to the guys that I believe in. But when I try and move those guys for what I see as their value and something fair for something that I need, people are just like, oh no, that's just some guy on your bench. Give me one of your starters. And that seems to be the approach that a lot of people in my league are taking to trades, is like, I want a starter if you want a starter. And they look at my lineup and see what the starters are, and that's the 8 or 10 guys that they want.
I would just say, because I understand that a lot of people have some concern about Josh Allen, especially long term. But man, he is such a league winner, and I hate that term. I truly do. But when you got a Patrick Mahomes as the anchor to your quarterback group, and then you can have a guy that can just absolutely be the hammer over the top, that's an advantage I'm trying not to give up. Because if you look at your top QB scorers right now, man, it is Mahomes, it is Lamar, it is Josh Allen, it is Russ, and it is Kyler Murray. Deshaun Watson is starting to re-enter that picture. And out of those 5 to 6 quarterbacks, mister, you have 2 of them. And that's a big advantage. I think where your struggles have come, I was looking over your running back group. Now you're very top heavy at wide receiver, and Nick Chubb going on IR certainly didn't help you. One thing I will say, the next guy I have been very tough on in the preseason. But you know what? My biggest area of concern, well, the second biggest area of concern, the biggest area of concerns is head coach Zach Taylor. He's an idiot. And was his reception total. But currently Joe Mixon is in the top 10 of running back targets. And that does my heart well. You've got Jonathan Taylor. Don't let I don't want to call it a slow, don't let the meh start he's gotten off to dissuade you, because that dude is going to be a baller. And one day the statue that is Phil Rivers is going to be gone. Maybe you'll see a little Jacoby Brissett. I don't know. But I think Jonathan Taylor is the goods. And if you were somehow to wind up with Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jonathan Taylor, Tyreek Hill, and DK Metcalf, man, you can fill in the gaps from there. You also have Damian Harris, Gus Edwards, who's going to give you some nice weeks, maybe just for this year. But I would honestly, I like DK, and if you can get him, I certainly would. I would be looking to add to this running back room. A little bit of depth could go a long way. Has that been your struggle? Like, I'm looking at your team now. Mixon's on IR. Chubb's on IR. Mixon could miss this week with a foot strain. Taylor's on bye. Gus is on bye. You could be rolling out the tag team of Damian Harris and Ernest Johnson.
It could be real ugly. Yeah. And that was part of what I meant earlier on when I said that I didn't have as much depth as I thought I did. And that was part of moving Kamara, was like, oh, I got Kamara, but behind him, I'm benching Jonathan Taylor most weeks, and he's going to be great. I got that in my back pocket. And then as soon as Chubb goes down, now I have one legit starter where I thought I had 4 on this given week, at least. So yeah, it's definitely been a wake up call of sometimes the calculator of what a trade value is doesn't actually tell you what it does to your team, because now I don't have I'm guessing Kamara's top 2 or 3 on the year. The way he was playing, I had him for the first 3 weeks of the year, 3 or 4 before I traded him. So I did get some use out of him at the beginning of the season. He's been playing well the whole time though. And I miss him.
He's actually the RB1, even in spite of having a bye. But hey, you've got to take calculated risk in this game, and playing it safe is a sure way to wind up in the middle. So even though Kamara, I'm not giving him away, but now is the time to at least consider moving him down the road. What does his offense look like without Drew Brees? Drew Brees is arguably the best check down to running back QB ever. I mean, you can look back to his time with Pierre Thomas, Reggie Bush, Tim Hightower, Darren Sproles. Now you got Kamara, who is clearly a better running back than those guys. But the point's made that, part of this is Drew Brees. Now I know Teddy Two Gloves came in last year in relief, and there wasn't too much of a dip with Kamara, but, he's had 2 epidurals in his low back. It's not like you gave away the perfect, most pristine asset on a dynasty roster, so I wouldn't beat myself up too bad. Let's hit your tight ends real quick, and then we'll start wrapping this one up. You have got the land of promise and upside, but no but no stable contender. You got Mike Gesicki coming off a donut. Evan Ingram, man, this guy is so much potential. Dawson Knox, mystery box, Irv Smith Jr., and Jordan Reed. That's an area where if I were going to give up, like we talked about Josh Allen, this is but by no means to take a shot at DK Metcalf. But if I was getting back like a George Kittle, I'm going to be much more inclined to make that move. I mean, George Kittle, Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, formerly artist known as Zach Ertz, used to be in this group. But those three guys, man, they're unicorns. And if you don't have one of those guys, you're really taking the worst of it. Has that been an issue for you, like tight end production?
Yes, because Evan Ingram is one of those kinds of talents that it feels like the good game is right around the corner all the time. And I mean, even tonight, they're playing a not good at all team and only scoring 6 points so far. So yeah, it's been rough. Gesicki carried me at the end of last year, but yeah, his consistency's up and down, and now he's got a quarterback change to worry about. Interestingly enough, the Dak owner in my league is one of those only two quarterback guys, and it was Dak and Deshaun. And when Dak went down, he didn't end up winning the fab bid for Dalton. So as far as I know, he's in a 1 QB situation. He owns Kittle, Andrews, and Higbee, I think.
Well, I've got our target. I would go to this guy and I would offer him Baker straight up for George Kittle. And maybe some people, that's the perfect cash out. That's the perfect scenario. I would rather have Kittle. Maybe you have to add something to your Baker to get Kittle, but I am going right to that guy. And you know what? He's going to push back, or she's going to push back and say, hey, it's Andrews. And I would be like, look, even if you had Dak, you would still need a third quarterback for just this very reason. Baker is the starter there. He's had his ups and downs, but you know what? You can feel comfortable. He was the number 1 overall pick. None of that's untrue. You're not lying to anybody. You're painting a narrative for this owner. So I'm going to give you Baker for Kittle plus what? And he may not go for it. It's kind of like where you set him up with the rope-a-dope, the famous Muhammad Ali. You make him think that, well, if I can't get Kittle, all right, fine. I'll give you Baker straight up for Mark Andrews. He gets to keep Kittle. He fixes his QB room, or she fixes her QB room, and you walk away solving one of your biggest needs on this team. And I would tell you, if no one else has swooped in and made this offer, you've got a green light to jump in there and make some big things happen.
All right. I have been messaging a lot of people in the league about more or less Baker and Darnold, of just like, okay, somebody else has to need a quarterback, and I've got 4, and I don't want to get rid of my top 2. And I don't know, a lot of people just their immediate response is like, I'm not a Baker guy. I don't believe in him. And then it's like, well, okay, Darnold, and they're like, well, look at how he's played. Okay. Well, I don't want to give you Josh Allen. So there we are.
I think you're fine. And I think that the way that you have to craft this equation, Baker right now, I am pulling this up as we speak. He is averaging 13 points a game in your standard 4 points per passing touchdown. And I think you have to explain that to your fellow owner, that's better than a lot of their RB2s. A lot of the RB2s that you're running out there every week that you're putting in that super flex position, they're not getting you 13 points a week. Maybe that owner was relying on a Jerick McKinnon or a Darrell Henderson. Great. 1 week you get 22 points. 1 week you get 5. You know what? At least Baker's giving you, 13, 14, 15. I know he had a really craptastic game against the Steelers, but before that, he was averaging, 15 points a game. Again, 15 points a game at the running back position is going to be right there in the middle of that mid running back too. 15 points a game is what Kareem Hunt's averaging. That's what Ronald Jones is averaging. That's what Nick Chubb was averaging before he got hurt. And I think that's how you have to explain it. That's the importance of a super flex. That's why people want to fill it with 2 running backs. I have ran into this. I am in a league where I thought I was going to be a contender. Just due to injuries, very similar to you, I've been put in a position of not contending. So I've got 4 quarterbacks, ironically, very similar. I've got Carson Wentz, Justin Herbert, Jimmy Garoppolo, and Tom Brady. I am, talking up Tom Brady's great schedule. I'm talking up Tom Brady's weapons. I'm talking up everything under the sun to try to move them. And I've realized I've just got to lay back. And maybe you'll have to do that for a couple of weeks. Let them experience the pain of not having them. Let them see, Tom Brady, in my case, in a shootout against the Raiders this week. Let them see Baker put up a pretty good game against the Bengals. And, like I said, his upcoming schedule over the next month, I mean, it's pretty friendly. I've got it pulled up right here. He's got the Bengals, who are 22nd against the pass, then the Raiders, who are 26th, then the Texans, who are 21st, then the Jaguars, who are 26th, the Titans, who are 28th. So he is going to have the opportunity over the course of the next 3 to 6 weeks to put some games together. And I think that's when you jump in and strike. You would love to move him straight up to the Mark Andrews owner and then figure out a RB4 for this team later. But that would be my first move. And explain to the owner the position. You can't do it in a condescending fashion, but I would just ask the question, hey, how often do you use Mark Andrews over Kittle? And what would his answer be?
Right. A bye week or
an injury.
That's it.
You know what? I'll give you Baker, and I'll throw in, I'll throw in a Mike Gesicki, and you can throw in a second or something like that. You would still have Irv Smith as your tight end too. You never know what Ingram may or may not do. And, say, hey, you know what? I'll even give you a little tight end insulation. I know Mike Gesicki's a little streaky, but he'll be there just in case. You really need a quarterback more than you need a second tight end. You kind of got this backwards. You've got 1 QB and 2 tight ends. I've got 2 tight end. I got 2 QBs and no real tight end. Let's help each other out. This is a partnership. And I think that's how I would come at it, because if you come strong against certain GMs in Dynasty, they're likely to buck you, if you know what I'm getting at.
Definitely, and he's one of the savvy players too. So he's one of those that is always kind of second guessing where you're coming from. How's he losing this trade? I think he takes that approach most of the time.
The old help me, help you, help me, help you.
Exactly.
We're in this together, and I think that's a lost art of trading, not only in Dynasty but in redraft as well. Is that sometimes we can help each other, and that's a great way. This is a partnership. It goes back to where trading came from, medieval times. Hey, you're a baker, and I've got a hog farm. I'll trade you a couple of loaves of this bread for some ham, and then we'll both go home and have ham sandwiches. There are no losers. There are no losers in this equation.
I like that. Is that going in the book of Memphisisms?
It can.
It's a little long-winded compared to some of the other ones, but
my co-host on the Dynasty Warzone, Jerry's threatening to write a book. Stay tuned. New York Times bestseller of Memphisisms. But man, I think we've went through this one pretty good. I think you've got some good ideas. I would love to see you get DK Metcalf on this team, but I really don't want to see. I would offer Baker and two wide receivers back. And if he had someone just a little bit better than Drew Lock, I don't get the warmest and fuzziest with that young man. I could see this thing. He's like the ultimate choose your own adventure novel. He could blow up and be awesome, or he could turn into the next Baker or Mitch Trubisky. The range of outcomes for him is very broad.
Definitely. Yeah. Especially in comparison to Mahomes or Allen. So,
well, I think you're fighting the good fight with this roster, and if you don't say win this week, maybe you go 0-2 against the median and you slip to like 5-9. That's okay. I had a team like that. I would just kind of pack it in, and I would start looking to my next set of draft picks. And how can I make this prepared for 2021? It sucks. You want to win. You want to go back to back. but it is what it is sometimes.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to buy a nameplate with somebody else's name for that belt if I don't turn things around here. So,
Well, hopefully you can get through this week. If you have to play Ernest Johnson and Damian Harris, it is what it is. But because then you will get Nick Chubb back at some point. Mixon will be healthy at some point, and you just got to continue to manufacture wins. That's what I like to call it. Try to grind out some wins. But as soon as we hang up with this call, Mister, you got to go get with that the guy who owns two really good tight ends and try to put one on your squad.
I will do that.
All right, man. Any other questions? Anything else you got for me before I get you on down the road?
I think that pretty much covers it. I'm really happy that you gave me this time and gave me this direction, and it's great to be part of something like this. So thanks, Memphis.
Well, I want to thank you for making time to jump on with me. We're doing this on a Thursday night. It's the only time we could get together to make it happen. Obviously, you're giving up watching a somewhat pedestrian game and to hang out with me. So I thank you for sharing your roster with us and getting the contractor back on the air. You and I have a little chat going somewhere else, so you'll keep me posted on this, and I look forward to doing more of these, man. So I want to thank you again.
All right. Thank you, Memphis.
All right, buddy. All right. Well, man, listen, that was Patrick. What an amazing guest. What a good dude. Thank him so much for jumping on with me and covering all the goodness that is his roster. And I love doing this, and I look forward to getting back. I've got my next one booked. I've got a gentleman named Kieran from Australia. I've got to figure out how to make it work with a 15-hour time difference. But let's be honest, I'm good friends with the Aussie guys, AJ and G, as well as several Aussies in our Dynasty Warzone Patreon. I'm sure I can make that work for you, Kieran. I'll get with you real soon. But on behalf of Patrick, I am Memphis. And remember, here at the Happy Hour Contractor, the roster you have today is not a life sentence. We can talk through it. We can rebuild it. We can make it happen. But on behalf of Patrick, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for tuning in, and everybody have a great week.